Hi, I'm Becky.
And I'm Keely.
We're interns here in the Education Department at the Johnson Museum.
Welcome to the first episode of Johnson ArtBeat.
We'll be doing a series of monthly podcasts about happenings at the museum.
Appropriately, we're going to start off by talking about the biggest event that Johnson has had this year so far, the opening of our new wing, which just happened on October 15th.
First, we're going to sit down with Ellen Averill, Chief Curator and Curator of Asian Art and Interim Co-Director at the museum, who will tell us about the new wing and the changes that the new wing has allowed in the original wing of the museum.
Then, landscape architect Mark Peter Keene will share his insights on the process of designing the Morgan Japanese Garden.
Hi, I'm sitting down with Ellen Averill, Chief Curator and Curator of Asian Art and Interim Co-Director here at the Johnson Museum. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me.
Sure.
Yeah, so we're sitting here in the new studio in the new wing of the Johnson Museum. And so I was hoping you could just tell us a little bit about what other spaces there are here in the new wing.
So in the new wing, we have a new lecture room, which is twice the capacity of the old lecture room. We have a beautiful Japanese garden designed by Mark Keene. We have collection storage room down on the basement level, which is doubling our storage capacity for the collections. My new office is in the basement. We have new education department offices and workshop room in the new wing, and we have 2 new galleries for temporary exhibitions.
Wow, that seems like a whole lot of stuff. Part of our goal as interns here is to see the student perspective. So how do you think the new wing will help students better utilize the museum?
Well, I think whenever we have programs in the museum, lectures and other types of programs, students will find that we have a much, larger, better facility, so we don't have to turn people away when we have a particularly popular artist coming to speak. You'll see that for our contemporary art exhibitions, the new gallery in the new wing is much better equipped for showing contemporary art. And then one of the things that people might not be so aware of course, when I say collection storage, that's not a very interesting thing to most visitors. But what putting that collection storage room in the new wing did for us is it allowed us to expand and renovate the 5th floor of the museum, the floor for Asian galleries and the floor where there are those wonderful views of Cayuga Lake and Ithaca and the campus. So by moving that storage area and my office away from the 5th floor, we were able to gain 50% more square footage for the Asian galleries. And beyond that, because of the way it's designed with the new display cases, we have more than twice as many works of Asian art on display as we did before.
Wow, that's very exciting. I know as curator of Asian art, that must be especially exciting for you to get to show so much more of the collection.
Absolutely. It's kind of a dream come true for me. It's one of the things I thought of when I first started working at the Johnson Museum in 1998, was that I felt that our Asian art galleries were a little bit tired looking, maybe needed some refreshing. And it was in the process of thinking about how we might renovate the Asian galleries that made us consider actually expanding the museum.
As a student, I've been to the 5th floor, and it's definitely a very nice space now. I didn't see it before, but there's definitely a lot of really great art up there to see. I highly encourage everyone to come check it out and see the views.
We did put a love seat on the 5th floor. In the old 5th floor galleries, there was a sofa, and that was a very popular place for students to come when they just needed a quiet place to chill out a little bit, or study, or sit with a friend and talk. So we wanted to be sure to bring that feature back into the gallery so people feel comfortable.
Well, that's very exciting. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me.
Sure.
It was great getting your perspective on the museum.
My pleasure.
I'm here today in the lecture room of the new wing with landscape architect and writer Mark Keane. Mark, welcome. Well, I'm just going to start off with a few background questions. Mark, I know that you're a Cornell graduate, right?
That's right, class of 1979.
And what ended up bringing you back to Ithaca to work on this project?
Well, I didn't come here to work on this project. I came about 9 years ago. I had been living in Japan for 18 years and was invited to come back and teach at Cornell for a year. That year went by. I was supposed to go back to Kyoto, but I liked living in Ithaca so much I stayed.
So then tell us a little bit about how the Morgan Japanese Garden project got started.
Sure. The wing we're in was originally designed by I.M. Pei as part of the original museum, but it wasn't built. Many years later, 35 years later, movement begins to put that wing on the map, and it eventually got redesigned in a bit of a different shape than the original design, but still there was a courtyard in the original that had the words Japanese Garden written on it. A patron stepped forward to fund it, and I was asked to design it.
Well, I was just in the Asian collection today, and I saw a scroll painting there, which I've heard has something to do with the garden.
That's right. The garden is called the Garden of the Tiger Glen, and that painting is called the Three Laughers of the Tiger Glen. The three laughers are three men. Each one represents a different religion, and the painting describes the moment when they overcome their differences, their sectarian differences, and find a unity of friendship that goes beyond their personal dogma. And this garden reconstructs that painting, that whole idea, in abstract, using 3 stones and a deep ravine. So the idea for this garden has been with me for 25 years. This particular form I drew up maybe 2 years ago, and it took a long time of process of planning and then construction to get to this point.
Those materials you were talking about, the stone, where do those come from?
Well, the moss and the stones all come from Connecticut. There's a particular farm with a forested mountain that collects patinaed, weathered stones and grows moss. So all of that comes up from the Connecticut forest. The pine tree comes from a specialty nursery outside of Philly. So it's sort of a collection of materials from different places along the East Coast.
One of the aims of our new wing is to try to attract students and have them interact with the Johnson as much as possible. How do you think students will react and participate in the garden?
Well, there are 2 things I'll mention about that. One is we are building a volunteer group called the Friends of the Tiger Glen Garden, who will show up once a day to tend and clean and water the garden 7 days a week, every day of the year when it isn't snowing or pouring rain. So the caring of the garden, for people who really like that sort of thing, is one way to interact with the garden. And people who are interested in that can get in touch with me or museum staff. I'm sure teachers will come here with their students. I've had 3 groups already before it was even finished. And of course, since it's such a quiet place, I think other students will just come on their own just to be here and spend some quiet time apart.
I agree. I definitely could see myself using it for that purpose. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mark, and for telling us about this new resource that we have at the Johnson.
Thank you so much for listening.
Be sure to come by the Johnson from 10 to 5 Tuesday through Sunday to take a look at the exhibits in our new wing.